So here I'm talking to a student who's got low balanced aptitudes. Previously we've looked at profiles which have average here, and there is a percentile scale at the bottom. When scores are low within a certain formula, then what Moresby does is that they stop comparing individuals to others because the scores look extremely low, and instead focus on internal relativities. There's a formula behind that which people who go through training might well spend some time looking at. But in essence, what Moresby are doing is they're attempting to focus on the shape of a pattern of the scores rather than a level, and to remove a focus on level, they inflate the bars so they look a little bit more acceptable. And what they've done here is added 2 to each of the test scores. So verbal would have started off at 6, and just as a bit of background, that's somewhere between the 11th and 23rd percentile against the general population. Interestingly, this student is not English as a first language, and they've chosen to complete the additional vocabulary test, which measures their vocabulary. Then, depending on the scores on that, their verbal reasoning score is adjusted up. And this student has added 3 to their verbal and 1 to mechanical, because there's some quite hard words in the mechanical test, particularly if English is not your first language. So this person actually started off with a scale score of 3 on verbal, which is really quite low. You can see they didn't attempt all the items, and they had quite a low accuracy rate. What we don't know is whether they knocked through the questions and then just didn't do the last couple, but that's quite unusual. Typically what people do if they're knocking through is they go straight through the end, which the numerical and the abstract and the mechanical would potentially indicate. But we really don't know someone's approach to the test taking unless you ask them. If they had got attempted at like 80 or 90 or something like that, we're pretty sure they've worked methodically through and run out of time. But when they're pretty much near the end, we don't quite know how they've approached it. So the student don't know that their results have been Ipsitized, and they don't know until and if you choose to tell them, and normally you wouldn't. When you look at the candidate tab, if you click on the words, it tells you the more detail there. The only 2 places you can see if a result's Ipsitized from the advisor summary and here. So going in as the individual, what I will point out is we can still get some value from the testing. If we average the spatial and mechanical to get their practical approach, we find their practical abilities are stronger than their theoretical learning approach, which is the verbal numerical abstract. So the chances are this student learns better by practice, trial and error, hands-on learning, project work, this kind of thing, rather than theoretical book-based learning. The other thing, if you remember back to your 1, 2, 3, 4 from the training course, if you've done it, is that where mechanical is stronger than spatial, it suggests a serialist step-by-step worker. And that's great because people can then learn things. And while this student might not thrive in a fast-moving curriculum, which is based around bookwork, if they do learn to do something in a step-by-step way and internalize that, they can apply those simple tasks as well as anybody can, and we need to remember that. So moving on to interests. First thing I notice here is a low interest in working with information. We find that generally when students aren't academically oriented and they don't want to stay in school, you tend to get low interest in information. Fairly strong interest in science, whatever that means for the individual. Could be something related to their interest in sport. To get something over here, they've had to say, I could and would like to do something. So they've said they are good at sport to get that. And also, of course, advising people. If we want to look at a bit more detail, we can go in here, and broad-based interest in working with things, and advise and help training is just the strongest. I'm betting that sport would be an area that they are wanting to do. Looking at personality, we see a fairly defined personality profile. So we have a clearly defined preference for focusing on the outer world of people and things around them rather than their inner world. And they have a preference for not dealing with the facts, but thinking about how stuff might impact on individuals in their decision making. So some students might say, okay, well, this is right, I'm just going to tell you what's right. This individuals like to think, well, if I do that, how's it going to impact your self-esteem, your feelings, etc. And interestingly, they prefer a spontaneous and flexible lifestyle rather than more structure and order, which we'd kind of predict from the aptitudes. You know, if you're a serialist learner, we kind of predict that you learn best from step-by-step approaches to things, and this person isn't. So I'm thinking they might not thrive in a learning process. They just want to have fun, kind of thing. Moving on to the careers, Moresby has a start point of academic attainment based on the test scores. It's suggesting VCAL. If you don't offer VCAL, all you do is you change that up. So this could be an unscored VCE in Victoria or an ATAR. So if I pop that up there, you'd have to do this. The system can't say, okay, you don't offer VCAL, therefore they'll only be offered higher level qualifications. What that's done is put in a few more careers which are possibilities, and you could, for example, say I want to focus on careers where there's an apprenticeship. That will change things again. One of the things I'd be doing here is looking at the themes of the careers. So none of them have long periods of academic training required for them. If we focus on the aptitudes, we get here tourism, sales, a really wide range of stuff because it's a balanced profile. A little bit of engineering. If we take that off and focus on the interests, we're getting a little bit of the medical stuff. Nutrition would seem like a stretch, but we don't need a degree to go off and do a nutrition qualification depending on what you do with that. Things like production manager, chemical engineering. Typically with chemical engineering you'd start off with a degree, but there are apprenticeship approaches through that, and if we look at that, you'd find the career routes. You start here and you can go through as an associate engineer if you do VCE bits. If you want to go and be a professional engineer, then clearly you need to go off and do a degree. I'd be interested in what the personality pops up here, because that seems to be quite strong, and it seems to be, these kind of things seem reasonable to me. The ones near the top, it could be hospitality, retail, enforcement of different kinds, or broader management of simpler products would all seem to be something which students like this could do. Let's take that off for now. If we look at options at 16, it's going to be picking up a whole bunch of the less academic subjects. So here PE's in, then there's some vet subjects. VCAL is here. So if you're in Victoria, there's the Victorian Certificate of Applied Learning, and there are 4 industry pathways. So although it's a style of education, we're actually showing the 4 registered pathways, which not all schools offer. But this sport and rec would seem relevant to them, and if we go down we have building, which is another option, but 4 in total, they won't be too far off the top. So community services and manufacturing. Apprenticeships likely to come up in a discussion, I would have thought. Health and fitness would be a classic. I can talk a little bit about this. There's quite a lot of information for them to read, but also similar areas and resources. End of discussion.